Hello, hello, hello. This is Cruellica Kain.
And it's Advent Nebula.
And we are here for this week's episode of Pop Culture Therapy, where we talk about everything related to pop culture and how we love it, how we hate it, and how we're going to piss everybody off at the same time with it.
Exactly. And this week, well, as we're recording this today, the merger between Disney and Fox has become official on the first day of spring.
Which I think is monumental in so many ways. I'm a business nerd, mainly because I have way too many college degrees and I like school. So I find it fascinating because a lot of people are concerned that Disney is monopolizing the market, which technically they are not. To monopolize the market, you have to be 51% of them, or more than 51% of the market, which they're not even 50%.
Yeah. The last time we had a discussion like this where there was a breakup was when it was just Apple and Microsoft, and Linux was just in its beginning, and Microsoft had 63% of the market at the time, and they had to break down, and Steve Jobs at the time helped Microsoft break down so they could keep in it, because he even realized you need that competition in there, and that's how we got a lot of the other stuff with our modern internet the way it is now.
Well, they had to do it again back in, I think it's the mid-2000s when they had the Xbox. They were monopolizing the market being a computer company as well as being a video game company, and they had to separate the Xbox because it was monopolization in the American market because the only competitors were really Japanese and didn't have a strong enough American foothold.
And that was I think like 2 or 3 years before Valve even created Steam on the PC market.
Yeah, it was before there was a clear, large, driven competition in the United States. Now, both Nintendo and Sony have a stronger foothold in the Americas. Even though they're always popular, they didn't actually have strong corporate presences in the States to be able to abide by that monopoly law.
And where Sony now, they're headquartered here in the United States. They're no longer headquartered in Japan.
Well, for video games.
No, the entire Sony corporate headquarters is in Los Angeles, California. It started in 2017.
Well, the only concern I have with that is if the full corporate entity is here, because they also own Blu-ray disc technology, is making sure, once again, for American monopoly laws, that doesn't play any kind of issues with that. But we're not really going to get into the business end of it. It's just, with pop culture, it's always fascinating when you have these companies do it, because you had Verizon and Warner Brothers do it last year.
Yep, and that's how Cricket became swept into Verizon as well.
Yes, yes, because T-Mobile owns Boost. Which is interesting because, just like with Cricket, they're considered the cheaper platforms, even though they have all the same tools and technologies. But when you had the merger with Warner Brother and Verizon, there was a lot of concerns there because of the fact that you have a cell phone company and an entertainment company that has so many technological platforms.
Exactly, and you were kind of seeing that earlier this year when it fully went in together, especially with the AT&T into that, with Crunchyroll, Adult Swim, and Machinima, and all those being grouped into their own entity now, and we're going to slowly see how that progresses through, especially now that it looks like the current properties of Dragon Ball and My Hero Academia might be the last, or also Attack on Titan, but that's probably going to be the last Funimation ones to actually air on there.
Ooh.
Because with what's going on, you're going to end up seeing all these properties that are on Crunchyroll now, that they're doing their own dubbing hit TV as well, which is going to be very interesting to see with that.
Well, and I think for Funimation purposes, it's nice to have that healthy competition. I know we have Sentai Filmworks, I know we have Viz Media, and we have Kraken, we have a bunch of other dubbing studios in the States, but after the breakup of Genion and ADV, back, this is probably like
2008.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a long time ago. We haven't had that clear competition for Funimation, so they've been, for the most part, the one and only. And while they've still done good quality, I think it's nice to have that competition because it's helping to drive different forces.
And what's really weird with Warner Brothers, they both own Viz and Crunchyroll, but Viz is not looped in with this new entertainment group. They're still in their publishing department, even though they have a media side as well.
Well, I think the reason they do that for Viz is because Viz is kind of like Funimation with Sony. They're such a strong, and this is conjecture, so this is outside perspective, not knowing any internal workings of the organization. I think they're both strong enough entities in their own that they need the corporate home for financial support for the back end when it comes to legalities and things like that, but they're able to still do their own concept. Because when you think of, for Viz Media specifically, when you have a show like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, not coming at this from a fangirl, fanboy perspective, but you have a show that's so ingrained in pop culture, mainly in more music, modern music.
And fashion also.
And fashion. Well, I think the music for the names, because that's more commonplace, you get to see the Warner Brothers home on top of it, because that's where you get the ending songs. You see them paying for those licenses, even though they're American bands. And then you get to see their almost tug of war of who they can use as a name in America. How can they modify it? And that's where you see the big parent oversight over the child when it comes to business. But that's where kind of rounding it back to Disney, it's going to be interesting to see how this happens, because if you go onto the Walt Disney Company website, which I actually did after Kaiji no Kami rushed in while I'm working and say, look at this, and I'm like, I have an HR meeting. But I finally looked at it, and the one thing that I have to admit from even seeing some of the articles is you now have Shape of Water, which was a Searchlights film. So there's hope that maybe they're saying, yes, Fox Searchlights was great. We're going to still continue doing indie films.
Kind of like when May had Miramax back in the day.
Exactly. Miramax also did a lot of their horror films.
And it released the early Tarantino films as well.
Exactly. So there's that hope that now that you have Searchlights, and hopefully they keep it, if not calling it Fox Searchlights, but at least calling it Searchlights, that they have that true indie home again.
Yeah. Disney did say that they're going to keep 21st Century Fox its own division. It sounds like it's going to be more for the R-rated properties, so like Alien. Deadpool is more than likely still going to continue under that label as well. Which
I was very happy to see Deadpool under that banner as well, because a lot of people are very concerned because the House of the Mouse, even though they did have like Miramax and Buena Vista and other entities do more of their R-rated films, a lot of people were legitimately scared, and I can appreciate it because Deadpool movies don't pull any punches.
No, they don't.
And it's a very public property. It's a property that, while it is supposed to be 18 and plus, I can honestly say for both movies, I saw a ton of kids in them. Like little kids. Kids that, I'm not a parent, but I'm even questioning the sanity of the mom and the dad. But, and then you had The Simpsons, which some people are arguing that, but I'm thinking it's more focusing on the fact that it's such a behemoth.
Yeah, and the green light for seasons 31 and 32, I will not be surprised if 32 is the last season for The Simpsons. Because a lot of people have brought up, Disney's going to make more money running this show in syndication than it is if they keep producing new material in a couple of years.
But the other nice image that you see on the banner is actually David Glover for Atlanta, which is an FX program, because people were scared about that. I know, even though American Horror Story has gone downhill the last few years, it's still an interesting concept, and it's an FX show, and FX, which has that, Archer, and I know Archer's on its way out, but still shows that resemble that, Atlanta, and so many other great television shows. You wonder, are they going to take those risque shows off? Well,
and it's a wonder, but FX, from my understanding, has pilots green-lit for 2 more new adult comedies that are animated to kind of replace, and it doesn't sound like they're going to touch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia either.
Well, exactly. So, and that's why I was so happy when I saw Danny Glover, or Donald Glover, not David, my lord, I'm terrible at names. Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, on the banner, because I thought it's a great show. Atlanta has definitely pulled a lot of new concepts into the television realm that haven't been done. And I know people say, oh, it's like Empire. It really isn't. It's a great, great show.
Yeah, it is. Also today, Cruellica hasn't watched it yet. I have. Tarantino's trailer for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out this morning, and I gotta say, it doesn't give away much, but it is pure Tarantino through and through with the trailer you're seeing. And it already sets up the premise that DiCaprio is this big hotshot actor in Hollywood. Brad Pitt's his stunt double, and they're friends outside of that and wander around Hollywood in the 1960s. You get to see a brief glimpse of Margaret Robbie as Sharon Tate. You get to see an early look at Bruce Lee, and the actor that got to play Bruce Lee looks like Bruce Lee. I was really impressed. But you did not get a chance to take a look at Luke Perry's character or the actor that got playing Manson yet.
No, they finished all filming, including any kind of reshoots that have to be done.
They're
correct?
under reshoots right now.
Because, not to interrupt, but with Luke Perry having recently passed, I'm wondering, have they completed all of the primary film and reshoots needed for his particular scenes?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. All I know is he's playing a detective in the movie.
Which is a pivotal part, which it's very sad. I fell in love with Luke Perry as a teenager watching 90210, but not the original, because I don't think he ever starred in or came back for. Maybe he did.
He was supposed to come back for the
newest one
episode reboot that they were going to do this year.
Yeah, I knew that one, but I didn't know if he came back for the other ones.
But with Luke Perry's death, with the reshoots currently underway, it makes you wonder if the reshoots are in response to his death in some way.
Well, and that's what my concern is. I'm hoping not. I know Tarantino always has a good vision, and he's pretty good about hedging his bets from what I've seen of all his films. I did actually watch the trailer for Stranger Things Season 3 today. Oh my lord. Well, first, the song that's playing over all the scenes is Teenage Wasteland.
Which is so appropriate for the year it's taking place in.
I know, but it's such a good song, and it fits because, while we haven't literally watched these kids grow up for the main cast, we've seen them over the last few years. And it's nice to kind of see the changes that they're making, especially when you look at 11, because she's growing as a character. She's not just a monster anymore. And they didn't give much away, really anything away for like what it's going to be. Is it going to be another Demogorgon, or is it going to be something from the other side, so to speak? They did make a reference to the fact that they're getting older now, so they're not just going to sit in their friends' basements playing games anymore, which is kind of sad because I remember going through that phase as a kid, and I'm hoping they don't just like break apart as friends, that they stay together.
And one last thing before we go on to our topic for this episode, I got a chance to watch Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix.
Oh, you did? I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet.
For anybody who doesn't know, this is an animated anthology series produced by Zack Snyder and a few other people who were going to originally do the rebooted Heavy Metal movies before Robert Rodriguez bought all the rights to that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So, but I recommend going in and watching this. I won't spoil anything because you kind of need to go into this not knowing what you're expecting with the 18 stories. Most of them are animated. There's like one or two that are not. I can't remember, but you got to go in with a blind eye on this, especially with how it leads up and everything fits together just like the original Heavy Metal did in 1986. Okay,
so is it like the Heavy Metal movie or the Heavy Metal comics? Because the movie was...
It's kind of a homage to the 1986 movie in a way, but... from the ideas and philosophies they're pulling, but they're all original. Two are original stories. The other 16 are taken from short stories or comics from all mediums that they got the rights to. Okay. None of them are from the Heavy Metal magazine, though, but they're all scattered about One of them was from a short story I remember reading in middle school that really has a real bleak death tone to it.
The Lottery?
No, there's another one. But it's literally, I won't tell you what story it is, so you go in, especially if you've never read this short story, but it's all about a concept of people living in bliss before their death.
Huh, that is interesting. I did see it pop up on my queue for Netflix, so I have to catch up on that. But if you haven't seen the original Heavy Metal from the 80s, it's an anime movie before its time. It hits so many milestones, and it is very adult in concept. So if you're not open to adult themes, it's probably not going to be for you. But it's so creative in storytelling.
Yeah. And even with one of my favorite parts, the drug-addicted robots, you're just seeing where this story's going with its concepts. But for 86, it was well ahead of its time. This is a movie that would have been a major hit if it ended up coming out in the mid-90s.
Exactly. I agree with that completely. It's one of those movies that I saw way too young, probably because the one thing that you learn about 80s children is their parents didn't care. So I ended up watching a lot of things I probably shouldn't. But with that said, because I do know they're going to be making remakes or rebooting the Heavy Metal.
Robert Rodriguez's next project now with Alita's done.
We're not even going to go there. I still have to yet to watch it, and I'm a little scared too. But with that said, our topic du jour for the therapy chair this week is actually going to be in honor of Disney and what they are going to possibly be doing. And that's either remaking or rebooting franchises. We're not just going to focus on the newly acquired Disney properties. There's so many out there. But we figured it would be a great topic for the first day of spring 2019 and the first day of a whole new pop culture world when it comes to Disney.
Exactly. And whenever you're adapting something brand new that hasn't been adapted before, readapting something, or if it's something that's been in the pop culture lexicon forever, where you're going to be either rebooting or rehashing material again, you're going to have fans that have their own ideas of what they want done. Star Wars.
Oh, yes. Star Wars is probably a very chaotic example. I think a more simplistic example for anyone who's a fan of anime. And it's actually the first of all of the examples, because it really started this boom, is actually Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, when they rebooted it to actually follow the manga.
And that's sometimes where things get a little gray. And movies are guilty of this as well, and we're going to get into that in a minute, because there's like how many properties that Disney got of Marvel-wise?
Yeah, not just Marvel, but they got a horror catalog now they can tap into again.
Oh, yes. But first and foremost, when you have a series that's based on original source material, we could even go with Harry Potter. The adaptation process is so challenging, because you're taking a body of works that's either complete or incomplete, which the Harry Potter series was even incomplete when they started the movies. The Full Metal Alchemist manga was incomplete when they started
they were only through the Greed arc when they started the adaptation of it.
And it still didn't get that far, because it never even actually ended until after the original anime was completed. So the difficulty when you have something like that happen is authors of the show have to either have a very good relationship with the original creator, which we can see where that fails, Bleach.
Yep.
Or they have to find a way where they can make something work that they can have at least have an ending, but it's open enough if they wanted to continue it. An example of that, but it kind of failed in their process because it wasn't popular enough, was Claymore.
Oh yeah, Claymore, and then Claymore with what they did, and its adaptations. The last 3 episodes became an original material just to kind of leave it open-ended, but unfortunately they didn't know where the author was going and ended up making it so they could not make a sequel.
Exactly. They unfortunately shot themselves in the foot because they tried to keep a good relationship with the author to continue it, but the author, as most creatives do, decide to go in a completely different direction than what they originally intended.
Or with Full Metal Alchemist, you tell they had a good relationship with the author, with her work, because they ended up actually consulting her on what to do so they could keep the themes going. So if there ever was another season, or if the show ended up getting a true manga adaptation, that it wouldn't contradict things.
Exactly. And yes, there were, like, when you had the new character in the original Full Metal Alchemist series, Dante, who I adored. I thought she was a great addition. She was a good opposite for Hohenheim, because she kind of played the dwarf in the flesh very well.
Very, very well.
But obviously, when you see the original intent, when you get Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, obviously you can see it's superior. I'm not, by any means, I love both series, but you could see superiority of Brotherhood versus the original.
Yeah.
But they're a great example of doing that in the anime universe, because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have Sailor Moon, we wouldn't have
Fruits Basket coming up now, and
Fruits Basket,
and there's still rumblings of Soul Eater actually getting a manga follow adaptation.
Soul Eater has been talking about that for a decade. And then you have some series that they reboot, but they don't do a full reboot. They do what's called a soft reboot, where the original still exists, but we're going to change it. And a great example of that, going back to Disney, is X-Men.
Oh, yeah. And we're more than likely going to see this as it folds into the MCU probably no earlier than 2022.
Yeah, for a third time. So the original trilogy, 1, 2, and I think the third one was Salvation?
Third one was Last Stand.
Last Stand. I tried to eliminate it from my movie.
It was so bad.
It was terrible.
And yet I found out Dark Phoenix is using the same script writer.
Oh my god.
So I'm like, this is going to be Last Stand all over again.
So you had these 3 core movies. Then they decided to do a soft reboot, going into who Xavier is, who Magneto is, who Mystique is. And the reason why it's a soft reboot is because while the originals exist, as you can see when you see the
Days of Future
Past, they all merge together in this convoluted method, which doesn't make sense if you rewatch the original movies, because people don't seem to know each other, but they seem to in the past.
And then
time doesn't make sense either.
It even gets worse with Apocalypse.
Oh yes, and Apocalypse was one of my favorite villains, and they ruined him. But that's kind of what a soft reboot is you take the original source, see where its flaws are, try to change it all over again and go in a different direction. And sometimes soft reboots can be really popular and really positive. I'm trying to think of an example, because they're so few and far between. Horror movies are also very guilty of reboots as well.
They'll even reboot in their own timeline.
They do. They remake their movies, reboot their timeline. The Thing.
Yeah.
You have The Thing from 82.
You have the original from 54.
So The Thing from 82 is a adaptation of The Thing from Outer Space in the 50s. It was a combo of an adaptation of the original movie as well as the book.
And the book came out in 32, which tells you how old this source material is.
Exactly. So you have this whole adaptation. It's convoluted. It's crazy as shit. And then if you've not seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil the entire movie, but you see, when they go off-site, you see events that have taken place, but you don't see exactly what's happened because it's before the movie starts. However, in the 2000s, in Hollywood's brilliance, they decided to give us exactly what happened before The Thing from the 80s started. And I recently rewatched it a few weeks ago because I was like, oh, it's not that bad when I watched it the first 2 times. I'm like, it's okay. I rewatch it and I'm like, this is convoluted and it's an insult to the original source.
And what even gets worse is they're retelling John Carpenter's story from the 82 movie the same way as like we're dumb or people haven't seen the original, which I highly doubt anybody going in had.
Oh,
not.
Good example of a reboot. And it's a reboot that takes away all of the sequels and you only have 2 movies instead of the 9, 10, 11 that exist. Halloween.
Yeah.
Halloween from last year was a great, not exactly it's not necessarily a sequel, reboot. Well, it kind of is a sequel. It kind of is a rebooting or a retelling of the story, but it's done 40 years later from the first one. And it's a great, great homage to the original source. So...
Yeah, and I haven't gotten a chance to actually see the new Halloween that came out last year.
You did?
Nope, still haven't gotten a chance to see it yet.
Hajime Okami's gonna murder you!
He's probably gonna make me force me to watch it here soon.
Yes!
But
oh my god, you haven't? I've seen it like 4 times already!
I have yet to actually get a chance to get and see it. But I'm trying to think of another one that's actually done that and did it successfully. And right now I can't think of one off the top of my head. But also, I'm thinking about with adaptations, you also have the Terminator franchise, which has had to try and reboot its own storyline so many goddamn times, and yet it keeps failing. It's like, the first 2 were great, but we want to kind of bring back that magic, and every time they try with these sequels since Salvation, it's just been a train wreck worse and worse.
Salvation wasn't that great either.
Yeah.
I love the first 2 Terminator films. They are by far... Actually, the second one is my favorite over the first one, but both are so well done in what they do. It's kind of like Alien and Aliens. They're so different, but so much the same. Because the first, actually, using both as examples, Terminator and Alien are horror movies.
Yeah.
Alien,
they're horror sci-fi is what they are.
Exactly. And then you go to Aliens and Terminator 2, and they are action horror movies. And it's fascinating because I never actually thought of that until just now. But you've had the movies, you've had the Sarah Connor Chronicles, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Now you had the remake that had Daenerys Targaryen and Doctor Who.
Yeah, and Dark Fate's coming out later this year, which is bringing back the original Sarah Connor. But it's also, in a way, a soft reboot from Terminator 5 Genesis.
I know, which makes no sense.
And Arnold's coming back, and the guy who played the T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day is coming back.
See, Terminator is a great example of convolution because... And horror movies, once again, are notorious for this, more so than other properties.
But anytime you're dealing with sci-fi and time travel, your convolution goes exemplarily high.
It really does. And it sometimes makes one wonder, did the person directing this movie watch everything else that came in the chain prior to? Because... not just for the mythos, not just for the characters, but to know where things are at. If nothing else, at least do like a diagram matrix of where things are at. So when we do remakes, because we have reboots, we've had adaptations, we have soft reboots. Remakes for me are the most frustrating. And a good example of remakes is Fantastic Four.
Oh, they have, yeah, even with the original adaptation and the remake.
Or Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, it did not get right until Sony was like, okay, we're going to co-work with Marvel on this.
No, it wasn't until Marvel said, please, let mommy handle it. Let daddy handle it. The cousins and brothers and sisters have no flippin' idea what they're doing.
And yet they're
Just
still
bring
letting
it
and yet
home.
they're still letting Sony have control over the
It's
property.
like, you can play with the toy, but can you let us at least build it?
Yeah.
Please? Because even with Venom.
Venom felt like it was a 90s superhero movie made in 2018.
It's like, I'm trying to think of a good way. It's like looking at one of my friend's child. You love them so much, you adore them, but you watch them destroy something because they pick up a toy and they're banging it, and you're like, no, give it to me, please. Let me at least save it. You can have this kind of broken toy, but please let me. It's just, Spider-Man, I think, is the worst example, or best example of a worse, because the first Spider-Man movie was great.
The second one is really good. And then you just saw it start going downhill, starting with 3.
Well, Sam Raimi didn't care. Nobody else cared. I think, not Elijah Wood.
Tobey Maguire was checked out.
Because they actually look alike. Tobey Maguire checked out, and the whole Venom concept was terrible. And then you have the second,
where you could tell Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield cared, but it's not. But it's like director Mark Webb was trying to turn 500 Days of Summer into a superhero movie with both of them.
Well, the first one was okay. The second one, kind of like Spider-Man 3, it's like, what? Seriously? I don't get it. And they're trying to go very high-handed with it. And then when you go to the Fantastic Four franchise, the first two, I've seen worse. The first one was okay.
Rise of the Silver Surfer did not do Silver Surfer or Galactus justice one bit.
No, I actually heard many arguments about that. And then when they went to Fan Four Stick, because nobody calls it Fantastic Four.
No.
The concept of, like, for kids.
Oh, for Sue and
Johnny, having them be siblings but be adopted, I didn't care. It's not like it ruined my life by race changing or things like that, because it's not the first time I've ever seen it. And I think it was Michael B. Jordan who played them.
Mm-hmm.
He did a very good job.
Yeah.
And I think it's Kate Mara who did Sue. She's Kate Mara.
Her acting's not the greatest.
It's hit or miss.
You knew what you were getting.
Exactly. You know what you're getting when you have any of the Mara sisters.
But I didn't like who they cast as Doom, Ben, or Reed. All three were just like, no. And the movie was absolutely abysmal. And it was a horrible remake. It was almost like, let's take what we really hated about the originals and remake it into a WB-esque pretty boy, pretty girl world and have no congruent story. And it's one of those movies that, if it hadn't been a superhero movie, or it wasn't even a Fantastic Four movie, if it had just been a concept sci-fi movie of its own telling, it would have worked. But because of all the baggage from everything else and then trying to make it a superhero franchise, you just saw it fall on its face right from the get-go.
Exactly. Now, a few things I'm hoping don't get remade, that they kind of just leave alone, if we're going to go with more current properties, is Deadpool.
Yeah.
Let Deadpool stay the way Deadpool is.
And Bob Iger has pretty much said he's going to leave it alone. And Feige pretty much said it's going to stay with the 21st Century Fox label, but still have somewhat of a tie-in to it. Now, some things I'm looking forward to with a finally getting adapted, because you know they're going to do this. We're more likely going to see a proper Silver Surfer movie with a Galactus at some point. I don't know if they're going to do Fantastic Four first or not, even though you kind of need to, but at the same time, you kind of don't have to. So that'll be interesting to see with where they go with that.
I am curious, though, if they will reboot Buffy. Either the movie or the television series.
Yeah, they do have rights to a few of Joss Whedon's earlier works. They have Firefly, They have Buffy. They have Angel. Though David Boreanaz on social media kind of hinted that they're looking at doing a get-together with Angel back again, not knowing if it might be a soft reboot or not. And he was talking about it on Twitter yesterday. And I think it's just because he's got nothing to do with Bones anymore.
Well, that's because of that whole lawsuit with Bones.
And the show went off the air last year.
Well, that's because of the lawsuit. I'm trying to think of what other... Because there's a huge number of properties when it comes to the movies. Sorry, I'm trying to actually pull up a list real quick.
Well, I'm kind of going to be curious to see what goes on with the future Alien under this now.
Well, oh yeah.
Especially...
That's a convoluted remake,
There's not going to be a third one in the Prometheus timeline now. Ridley Scott's already said that, and Ridley Scott's apparently working on something other project right now that's going back to what he did like with Gladiator in that era.
Overall, I'm actually personally really excited about what's going on with Disney. And I have faith that the House with the Mouse, as I've always loved to call it because it's so creative when you say it like that, will do a lot of good things. Remakes are not necessarily bad. I know we've given a lot of terrible examples, but there are a lot of great remakes as well.
The Friday the 13th remake I thought was a great horror remake to go on with a new storyline for Jason, but it just got conjured up with so much legal battles that are still going on.
And when you have remakes, I would say don't be afraid of them, because remakes don't necessarily mean it's going to be anything bad.
The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Oh yes, The Man Who Knew Too Much, when you have the Jimmy Stewart remake from the original in the 30s, was a great film.
Scarface is another example of an awesome remake of a film from the 30s.
Actually, yes, I didn't even think about that, but it really is a remake. And so remakes do have a lot of positive connotations. And I think what a lot of people are very fearful of when you do come into the remake realm is, are you remaking it because you want to see a better version? Are you remaking it because you feel you could tell it in a more modern world?
That's the best example of Scarface right there. Retelling it for the era that the 80s drug craze was compared to Prohibition, which the 32 version was talking about.
Absolutely. Or, which I think is what most often than not is on people's minds, are you doing a remake because you have no other new ideas? Because they're remaking It's a Wonderful Life, they're remaking Jaws, they're remaking so many. So I look at it as there's a lot of chance opportunities that a remake can be very good.
Suspiria from last year, I just got a chance to watch that remake. It honors the original version so well, and even though it's a lot gorier and a lot more violent, its message is for a modern day, just like the original version was a commentary on the 70s.
Well, and I'm thinking about it, Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a huge Zack Snyder fan.
You know my feelings on Snyder.
But the fact that he took a Romero film, same thing with Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
With, I think I can't remember his name, but both remakes, fantastic, because they take what's good about the original Romero film and add new elements to it to make it so much better. And then you have The Fly, which I actually do love The Fly with Gina Davis and
Jeff Goldblum. That's one of the Cronenberg films of his stuff I can't get into, even though it is considered one of his best. I prefer Scanners, which is scaring me on the fact that Jeremy Irons' movie is actually going under a remake filming currently.
Well, and that's where it's fascinating when you come to movies that are remakes. Star is Born. I have not watched it yet, but from everyone I have talked about, because it's been remade for the 4th time. It's the same plot, same story, same semblance of characters. And I've seen the original, well, I don't know, actually, was it the original with,
The original version was during World War II.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it was. Because I'm thinking of, oh God, now I can't remember her name. Wizard of Oz. Judy Garland. Because I think she's an incredible actress, and I love the original with Judy Garland, and knowing that there's opportunities to do that. So if you see a remake, don't necessarily think the worst, but give it an honest chance. Now with reboots,
Oh, those go so many different ways to Sunday.
remakes, you have a better chance of doing it. Reboot is when you're taking the exact same property and doing it for a new elements, like what we had talked about before with the X-Men, with the
Fantastic.
Fantastic Four. Those are where it scares me, especially when you get into a franchise that is comic book related or horror movie related.
And just look at how many times they've rebooted Batman with DC. DC's rebooted Batman 4 times now, and we're about to get on our 5th.
And we're about to get on our 3rd with Superman.
Yeah, because Cavill officially has been now announced as gone, and it all has to stem with the fact he signed on a 3-year contract with Netflix for 3 seasons of The Witcher.
And then when we come into adaptations,
and that's one thing that's scaring me. Was like, how's this Witcher adaptation going to go? Is it going to pull more from the books, or is it going to take more elements from the games?
but when you come into the world of pop culture, adaptations are going to be the bread and butter of everything that exists. If you didn't have adaptations, we wouldn't have half the books we have. Exactly. Or half the movies we have now. While I'm not a huge fan of the Hunger Games, I do know that they were quite popular. And there's a two-way street when it comes to adaptation of any pop culture medium. When it's coming to book, to movie, or television. When it's coming from manga to television. When it's coming from video game. Or it's going vice versa. The nice thing is, with adaptations, unlike remakes and reboots, and I think this is where the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been very successful, is it's taking a core material that's known in the comics. They're taking actual comic book stories and they're adapting them from the screen in a legitimate and authentic manner.
Yeah.
And it's making people want to know where they came from.
Exactly. And they're not adapting the exact storylines in those comics. They're picking what they know is going to work from the formula they have established themselves, starting with Iron Man.
Exactly, because knowing some of the storylines of how they progress, they're not exact, but you get to see a lot of elements, and that's what's good about adaptations, is you have to know what your source material is, and that's where anything, remake, reboot, adaptation, all succeed, is you have to have someone who likes the core product.
Look at something like Bond, which is going on to its 25th movie that's going to come out next year. They have only adapted truly a handful of the books, but every time you can tell they have had fans of the material actually adapt these stories at the same time, even though you've got flops like Moonraker and Octopussy in there.
Favorites of two of our friends. I think more jokingly than anything else, or I hope.
Now, one legitimately likes Moonraker and one legitimately likes Octopussy, and the two of them hate the movies on the vice versa
side.
Yeah,
the respective films, vice versa. But think of even Deadpool, not to keep on bringing it up, but Ryan Reynolds, reading the comics for Deadpool and watching the movie, you can see the love for the character, not only from him, but everyone who works on the film.
Yeah.
You cannot like that character. You cannot not know anything about the character and be in that film. You have to know something to be able to write that script, to be able to help direct people in what they're supposed to do and motivate people to get to the result that you're looking for.
Especially with the trash talker that Deadpool is, you need to know the source material.
You really, really do. And that's why I love Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. I have watched him for years in so many films. The Zodiac Killer, or just Zodiac is called.
Jake Gyllenhaal, ironically enough, now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Exactly.
Also.
And then watching Soap, which if you've never seen that movie, I can understand why. It's a great film.
Or go back to early Robert Downey Jr., Back to School, Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. So you could see Tony Stark in him. You could even see Sherlock Holmes in Robert Downey Jr. because that's a great adaptation. I thought they did such a good job.
Both of them were good, and they're doing one more to kind of send it off on a trilogy, which I'm going to be really interested to see next year.
And then you have a character like Chris Evans. I was very, very fearful at first.
I was very skeptical when I saw Human Torch playing Captain America.
Well, then again, I was very skeptical with Chris Hemsworth because while he's a pretty face, and I love Chris Hemsworth, especially the most recent meme that's on Twitter for him. I'll have to show you because it's hilarious. But nevertheless, where others had a little bit more acting credit, not that you needed it to do these movies, but not knowing anything, I was a little afraid because I'm like, can he stand up to these characters?
Well, and for me, with Thor, it was like, oh, so they got, to me, at the time, Todd Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth were relatively unknowns to me, so it was like, okay, this is probably going to work because you have a Shakespearean director and writer doing this movie, so you had a pretty high chance of relative unknowns coming in because all you have to do is watch the Hamlet he did in the 90s.
Well, exactly, but there's always those fears. I have to admit, the moment I saw Chadwick Boseman, even though I knew nothing of what he did walk on screen and play T'Challa, I was like, all right, he's sold. I'm good. He proved himself without any effort at all, which is what you want when you're going to play something source material.
And with that as well, you go in and look at Heath Ledger when he came in as Joker. That was probably one of the most skeptical castings of the last 20 years.
You want to know the only person who had 100% complete faith in him, that he felt he could do it? Kaji Okami.
Wow.
Moment, because I'm like, have you not seen the Canterbury Tales? Have you not seen 10 Things I Hate About? And I love those movies, but it was still, he's a rom-com actor, not
a sociopath.
Exactly. Well, and unfortunately, I think it was his undoing at the same time, posthumously. But it's one of those films that I think is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. By far, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that is where an adaptation really is strong. Is if you can pick up any movie, watch it, and it doesn't matter how many times you watched it, how long it's been since you watched it, if you know, you pick it up and you're going to love it.
Yeah, it's like me with the original Nightmare on Elm Street still.
Yeah, that's an adaptation I get to rewatch again. And I've seen the remake. And let me just say one thing to Hollywood. If for some reason Hollywood ever watches our little in the hole podcast, or listens, I mean. I say watch. One of these days we're going to do video. Just have to put on makeup. But what I have to say to Hollywood, and I will say this till whoever gets it, do not make a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street unless you know how to do it right. Freddy is supposed to be a combination of scary and funny, not just scary, not just horrendously evil. People don't like him because he's just a villain. They like his charisma. But if you take away the charisma, you have nothing.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger needs to be a slapstick and scary character at the same time.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I don't think modern day Hollywood understands that.
No, they like the dark and gritty and scary. And yes, the guy who played him was a great Rorschach because he had that for Rorschach, just not Freddy. But before I get into a tangent, which I'll be doing later today, I'm actually looking forward to, once again, seeing what Disney's going to do.
Yeah. likely with these properties, because of the acquisition, even though they've had the knowledge, they're likely not going to actually start folding in these characters till what's probably going to be the middle of Phase 4, after we get the Doctor Strange and Black Panther and Captain Marvel 2, and probably right around the same time Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is getting ready to hit, is probably when we're likely going to see these adaptations, because it really honestly wouldn't surprise me if we see Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer be the first characters they introduce and kind of wait to put the X-Men in.
Which would make sense, because you're going to have a current X-Men movie out, even though it's going to be by far terrible. You're going to have one out that's going to bomb, but it's going to be so fresh in people's minds. You don't want to do that to the audience. So having something like Fantastic Four would be a good idea. And
especially the Guardians 3 would be the perfect time to kind of introduce the seeds of Norrin Radd and Galactus in there, even if it's not really in James Gunn's final script, kind of just put them in there, sow the seeds to let know this is coming.
Exactly. Now, let's all wish for Kaiju Okami's hope that somehow they have done it, because it'd be kind of cool to see it. They just have Silver Surfer just flying by somewhere in space, looking for a new planet, because that's all he wants. He doesn't care if the Surfer, if Galactus, if anybody else is in the movie. He would just like to see the Herald of Galactus just zoom by.
And closing out, read a real interesting article today on comicbook.com. Apparently the Avengers trailer that's dropped, 30% of the footage won't even be in the movie because they're trying to throw people off from spoilers.
Oh, I kind of figured that. The trailer, I've watched some of the trailer dissections, and I kind of figured I don't wish my life away, but I want this movie now.
We're only 5 weeks away.
Only 5 weeks away. That's like a quarter of a pregnancy. All right, everyone. Well, that's where we're going to end it. So once again, thank you for listening, and please let us know in the comments what you think, what your favorite remake, reboot, or adaptation is in pop culture. It could be anything.
Or let us know in the comments books, comics that you'd like to see actually get an adaptation that have yet to get a TV or movie adaptation.
There's so much out there, and I know we could talk for hours. So thank you very much, and have a great night.